It's time for News Talk 720 KDWN's Ask the Expert Hour. Have a question? Call now 702-257-KDWN. That's 702-257-5396.
Greetings and welcome in. This is Ask the Experts here at AM 720 KDWN. Jim Dallas along with Robert Seik from Partell Pharmacy. Go to partellpharmacy.com. Also 702-791-3800, the number. 2 locations here in Southern Nevada, 8751 West Charleston, also 5835 Southeastern. That's partellpharmacy.com. Now, Robert, welcome back to KDWN.
Thank you, Jim, and it's great to be here. It's Christmas Eve, so good night to have our show out here.
It is indeed. And, of course, it's going to go in a flash this next week as people get through Christmas, and now we're talking about 2015. Really hard to believe, but that new year is fast approaching. And a lot of things people do, Robert, at this time of the year, they try to better themselves. They have that New Year's resolution, and I think more times than not, people want to lose weight. They really do want to get back in shape again. I was wondering, does Partell Pharmacy have any types of programs?
Well, you know, Jim, it's a good topic for tonight's show. I'm glad you brought it up because now's the time that everybody's making resolutions, right? And those of us in the health and wellness field, and that's what I pride my company on, we know that this is the time when a lot of people are making resolutions about getting healthier. Most often what comes along with that is weight loss, a weight loss program. And yes, I'm glad you asked because we do have programs that we can offer people. You know, at the pharmacy, you know, when you need a consultation from a pharmacist, we're usually the free healthcare practitioner. All you have to do is give us a call or pull open the door to ask a question.
Right?
And we can answer those questions. And I spend a lot of time educating myself and my staff on this field that we're in. And we've called it by many names, Jim: integrative medicine, functional medicine, just general health and wellness. We pride ourselves on knowing stuff. And what has crystallized along the way is a couple of different variations of a program that we can offer people who ask a general question like, well, I just want to get healthier. Where do I start? And it's a relatively new initiative for us. And I don't know if you've seen either one of the 2 pharmacies, Jim, but our pharmacy at Easton and Russell actually has a juice bar and a protein smoothie bar.
Nice.
And the main goal there was just to put some people right at the front door that customers would walk in and see, say hello to, and know that they have access to somebody to ask questions. And we know what the common questions are. Do you have something that can help me sleep? I need a good multivitamin. Those are all common. And we spent a lot of time stocking the best products that we could find in the market. And now it's the next level. You asked about programs, and we're moving into the new year doing something in collaboration with a group called the Metabolic Code. And the Metabolic Code is the program that we're going to use to help people get healthier. And basically what it involves is clients start by taking an assessment. The assessment is now done online. This is brand new, just launched in Las Vegas in December at the annual anti-aging conference hosted by the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, A4M. Just launched this portal. We were one of the first members in general, and I think one of the very few pharmacies where clients can start and they would receive an email. They start to fill out an assessment form, and that assessment form goes through different sections of health and wellness, and it gives guidance for our health coaches or consulting pharmacists to help people get started identifying what the problem areas are.
We're speaking with Robert Seik of Partell Pharmacy. It's partellpharmacy.com if you want to get some more information. 702-791-3800 is the number. As Robert mentioned, 2 locations in Southern Nevada, 8751 West Charleston, 5835 Southeastern. When you're talking about those juice bars, Robert, I've always heard that there are some different smoothies that have a lot of calories, and I'm sure there's those that don't have a lot of calories for those people on that diet.
Oh, I got your attention with the juice bar, huh?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, you know, I've seen a number of new juice bars pop up and change their recipes. And what I did notice prior to the last year or so, I'd see a lot of juice places, they're selling what humans almost seem to develop a fast addiction for, things that are sweet. And although we have the perception that fruit smoothies are very healthy for us, and I think fruits are great, they're just really easy to overdo it with fruits and the sugar content in fruits.
Right.
So I'm not a big advocate of that. Smoothies typically involve combining the fruits with yogurt. And what I really like is to use as many vegetables as possible to make a juice. And there's a few different ways to go about it. You can have one of those juicers that spins a screen. That's the old Jack LaLanne type, and I believe the kind they use at grocery stores like Whole Foods. You can compress it. I think that's a little bit better to have, less high shear and heat added. And then when you compress the vegetables, you can get juice out that way. But there's no fiber in either one of these methods because you've taken out all the plant fiber. You can use a high-speed blender like a Vitamix, or just as good but cheaper, something called the Blend Tech. And that's actually what we use. We use commercial Vitamixes at our juice bar called the Green Regime. And the reason why I like that is, well, it's fast, and it's the economics of making juices for us. We can get it done quick and have a good recipe pre-made, put it in the blender, blend it up, and you get all of the fiber and all of the nutrients. What I like is to have more of a shift of juicing to vegetables and move away from fruits. Have as few fruits as possible. We have, my favorite one is called the Clean Green, and I believe the only fruits we have in there are a little bit of green grapes and a green apple. Those add nutrition, but we use the bare minimum possible to make it palatable, counterbalancing things like kale, collard greens, spinach, and a little bit of ginger, so you get a lot of fiber. And those vegetables, those green leafies, don't have any sugar in them.
Well, I was wondering about the vegetables. The green vegetables, those tend to be the best, don't they?
If you look, there's a scale called the Agricultural Nutrient Density Index. And if you look at vegetables that are the most dense in nutrients, you'll typically find it populated in large percentage by dark green leafies. Now, I do think sweet potatoes, particularly if they're organically grown, are still pretty high at the top of that list. But then you have things like your collard greens, kale, spinach. I already mentioned those. On down your top 10, and I don't have the list memorized, you're going to find foods like broccoli. I mean, these green vegetables, and any vegetable for that matter, they're designed to pull minerals out of the ground. And we need the minerals.
Right.
They change them chemically because the plant pulls them out of the ground, has to change them chemically, and then we eat the plants. We don't necessarily eat the dirt to get our minerals. We eat the plants that have changed the minerals in a way that we can more easily absorb them through digestion.
That's fascinating the way you break that down, because a lot of people don't think of that. They go, hey, I planted tomatoes, I ate the tomato, and it tastes pretty good. And you're not thinking about the breakdown of the whole process.
That's true. And one of the things I do if I do a public health lecture and talk about getting healthier, and we had on a previous show, we talked about changing that food pyramid and not have the grains and cereals at the bottom as your biggest portion, but having the vegetables, in particular the green leafies, that's what you should eat the most of in volume. And I tell people a good start to get healthy, to detoxify, get fiber, and get minerals is to eat or drink about a punch bowl's worth of dark green leafies per day.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot.
I personally don't have that much time to chew. And it's one of the reasons that I started to learn about juicing recipes that used a lot of these green vegetables, blended in particular. Okay, so using the Vitamix or the Blend Tech. And I wanted the juice bar to be able to inspire people, at least sample to them, say, you can try this. You don't have to buy one from us. If you want to use this week's promo code, it is the metabolic code or metabolic code. Get 20% off of the juice bar or any non-prescription item at my pharmacies. And you can try the Clean Green, and that's a good start because that's a huge servings of vegetables. But I give some tips on juicing when you're going to consume it. You can't just chug it rapidly like you are a beverage to hydrate yourself, because we still have some digestion to do, especially if the juices are blended. So I tell people to actually put the juice in their mouth, swish it a little bit, or even have the motion of chewing, moving their jaw up and down, because that'll start enzymes in the mouth that will activate enzymes in the stomach, and it's those enzymes that'll combine to pull the nutrients out of the juice more efficiently. And you also want to sip it slow. You don't want to chug it down all at once because you'll absorb less that way. You want to go a little bit slower and consume slowly. And I think you'll get more nutrition that way. And juicing is a way to start. So if you have a big salad and one green drink a day, that does so much good for your health.
It is Ask the Experts here at AM 720 KDWN. Jim Dallas here along with Robert Seik from Partell Pharmacy. Go to partellpharmacy.com, 702-791-3800, the phone number. A couple of locations here in Southern Nevada. And, of course, that metabolic code that you're talking about, people can call and use that as the special of the week, right?
That's the discount code of the week, so it's good for a discount on any non-prescription item. And, the metabolic code is the title of the program, the health and wellness program that we had. And it's been a big part of my whole learning process in this field, whatever you call it, functional medicine and integrative medicine. And people often ask, well, what does that mean and how does that pertain to me getting healthier? Well, the way we look at disease parameters in functional medicine is we don't want to get carried away with, the latest version of, say, the U.S. ICD-9 code book has 12,000 different diagnostic codes, 12,000 different things you could be diagnosed with. If we look at many ancient cultures, you'll find, from the Greeks to the Chinese to the Ayurvedic practitioners in India, even the 18th century homeopaths in the United States, disease was categorized in maybe 3 to 5 main categories or 17 what they called archetypes in homeopathy. So the metabolic code is a formalized program that streamlines the main things we look at in functional medicine a little bit easier. And the assessment form that patients take, and what we've done is we've created an email address for listeners to use. It's radio@partellpharmacy.com. And they can just email and say, hey, I'd like to get started with the program. They'll receive an email invitation. Mm-hmm. They'll fill out this assessment form, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in detail on this show, Jim, if you like. They'll fill out the assessment form, but that's a starting point, and it'll give them feedback immediately. They fill it out online. Right. They'll get an invitation, activate their wellness portal, and they'll get an invitation, and they'll get the scores, and they'll say, well, what am I scoring? Well, we're separating disease now, looking at your 5 main functional categories, and we'll talk about them after the break to give more detail. Absolutely.
If you want to get healthy for the new year, then this is the program for you. It's Partell Pharmacy, partellpharmacy.com, 702-791-3800 is the number. Again, 2 locations here in Southern Nevada, 8751 West Charleston, 5835 Southeastern. You're listening to Ask the Experts. We'll take care of our first little bit of business and shall return here on AM 720 KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is Ask the Experts here at AM 720 KDWN. Jim Dallas here along with Robert Seik from Partell Specialty Pharmacy. Go to partellpharmacy.com and get some more information. And I tell you what, we always learn a lot when you're here, Robert. 702-791-3800 is that phone number. 8751 West Charleston, also 5835 Southeastern, 2 locations here in Southern Nevada. Now, we talked a lot about the juice bar and smoothies and that sort of thing just a few minutes ago. We also talked about the metabolic code, and I was wondering about that metabolic code assessment. Kind of maybe fill in the blanks there with that one.
Yeah, I'll give you an idea of what, and the listeners an idea of what they would expect, what this assessment is all about. So rather than that 12,000 code ICD-9 book that I talked about, let's more simplify the primary things that we're concerned about in functional medicine. The assessment form is not designed to diagnose. It is not designed to diagnose complicated diseases. We're looking at primary things that are actually broken down in a systemized format. The metabolic code founders call the triad approach, and there are 5 triads. So if we look at triad number 1, let's call that the energy triad. And the way the body's metabolism and function works, our biology, well, the main things that control our energy in the body are the glands like the adrenal glands. Okay, they make cortisol, but also make things like adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine. You have your thyroid. Okay, your thyroid is the main regulator of your body's metabolism. I mean, you've probably heard of people that have hyperthyroidism, too high, and they get really skinny. They get a problem called Graves' disease, is hyperthyroidism, or what's more common is hypothyroidism.
Yeah, that's where people become large and they're really not consuming that much. Is that right?
That's right. And, there's different degrees of hypothyroidism. Severe hypothyroidism, you would see somebody with a big round face. They're going to talk to you and say that thinking or getting a thought out is like pushing a thought through Jell-O. Their minds just don't work so fast. They actually feel depressed. They're cold all the time. Their bowels are sluggish. But, that's in a severe case. But what if you have mild hypothyroidism, or what a clinician would refer to as subclinical hypothyroidism? It's not so bad that you definitely need major intervention, but the knob is just turned down on the thyroid activity just a little bit. Well, what if that little bit means that you're gaining a pound a month? Okay, well, do that for 3 or 4 years, and you've now gained 30 or 40 pounds.
Right.
Even if it's half that, right? It's a lot. So adrenal, thyroid, and then your pancreas. So your pancreas, a lot of people, especially the diabetics, are familiar with the fact that the pancreas makes insulin. Insulin's job that we talked about in a show is to take energy from foods, primarily carbohydrates, and pack it away, put it in the cells. The liver can put it away in also fat. That's insulin's job, is to store. But the pancreas also produces another hormone called glucagon, and its very basic job is to mobilize energy. So you can see you have your adrenal, thyroid, pancreas triad, and those are things that a functional medicine practitioner would look at to determine, well, how good is your energy? So you can imagine what some of the questions are like on the assessment form for that section. How's your energy level? Are you tired in the afternoons? Are you tired in the morning? Do you find that you fall asleep after meals? And all of these things tell a slightly different picture that our health coaches use. And we don't diagnose at the pharmacy, my health coaches or my pharmacists. We just kind of use the tool as guidance to show the patient that the primary functional parameter they may want to address would be their energy triad. Triad number 1, because of all the 5 triads, that might be the score on the assessment form that comes up the highest.
We're speaking with the Robert Seik of Partell Pharmacy. Check him out, partellpharmacy.com. Also call 702-791-3800. 2 locations, 8751 West Charleston, also 5835 Southeastern. Now, before a person gets started with the resource material that we've been referring to, Robert, is there anything out there that they could maybe prepare themselves for, maybe read up a little bit?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because the metabolic code, that's something that anyone can put into a web-based search. And one of the things they're going to find is the foundation for the program is actually a book written by the primary creator, a friend and mentor of mine in functional rejuvenative medicine. His name is Jim LaValle, also first trained in his career as a pharmacist. And he published a book called Cracking the Metabolic Code, 9 Keys to Optimal Health. And that is the basis for the book. So readers can get the book, and when I start to mention terms like thyroid, adrenal glands, pancreas, insulin, glucagon, well, they can get a much better idea from the Metabolic Code Handbook of how this all plays in. So they'll learn quite a bit about the physiology. And what we do with the results of the assessment form, when we show a client, let's just say, triad number 1, their energy triad, is where we have to give them the most help. Well, there's always a foundational nutrition program. So there is a program called the Metabolic Code Diet. Okay, a lot of information in the book on that as well. But our health coaches can refine that for individuals. And then, of course, the book also goes into very key nutrients. I mean, that's what I've learned about the most in pharmacy. What nutrients, not always medications as first line, but how can I improve someone's energy level? Let's say blood sugar control, talking to them about things like magnesium or chromium. And that's information that you will find in detail in Jim LaValle's book, Cracking the Metabolic Code.
It's fascinating. And if you just tuned in, you're listening to Ask the Experts here at AM 720 KDWN. Robert Seik is here from Partell Pharmacy, and we're learning along. We've been talking about the juice bars and smoothies and the metabolic code, but this book that you're talking about, I mean, that I think kind of fills in a lot of blanks.
You know, it really does. And I think for the public, indeed, and for me, I did a lot of learning by reading books that were recommended. That was one of the first ones recommended when I knew that I had to learn more about this whole space, health, wellness, functional medicine. And Jim LaValle's definitely taken me under his wing. We're actually hosting a seminar for medical practitioners in January in Las Vegas because the continual learning process for people in healthcare, is always going to be present.
Right.
And the fact is there are more and more patients asking their medical practitioners questions about better health and wellness, potentially avoiding more and more prescription drugs. And the good news is many practitioners are learning, and Jim does a lot of that teaching. And this whole metabolic code platform, like I said, was just launched in a big way at the World Conference on Anti-Aging Medicine at the Venetian this month. And he's coming to Las Vegas because I have my group of physicians that I've worked with for a long time that refer me business, and they know that my passion is about advancing the knowledge for all of us. Well, Jim is going to take the metabolic code concepts for the practitioner, and over a 2-day seminar in combination with another physician as well, in conjunction with another doctor, we're going to show physicians how they would work a patient through this program. And it's a little bit different from what my health coaches would do with that, say, online assessment. We'd start there. We give the patient some dietary recommendations and some supplement recommendations, but what the medical practitioner will do is the next level. Now they will start to diagnose. Well, you're high on the thyroid score, they're going to order the thyroid laboratories that they need to explore. If you don't score high on a thyroid scale, so let's say that that's not an identified problem area for you, well, maybe the physician will order just a couple of basic labs. But if the assessment form identifies, and it often does in patients, and shows the practitioner, wow, this is definitely a person who has problems with their thyroid, they may expand the panel that they order for the thyroid from a basic 2 or 3 different tests to maybe 3 or 4 different lab values that are all related to thyroid function, because this is all about optimizing the body's metabolism, the body's metabolic code, and the biochemistry, and that's the platform we use.
Yeah, the body itself is just a fantastic machine, and certainly you want to do what you can to make that machine work as best as it's intended. And obviously, if you're drinking these smoothies and you're taking in a lot of vegetables, got to be good for you.
It's got to be good. That's a good start, a big portion of the metabolic code and the diet program. And this is where my health coaches really get involved. It's not only the good nutrients that you take in, but the nutrients that you don't. And we've talked about it before on the show. Remember, the average American in a year consumes 150 pounds of sugar, 250 pounds of flour.
Wow.
We got to get that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, these things, not only do they not have nutrients, they rob our bodies of critical nutrients. So if you replace those things with much healthier foods, that's the first major step. And if anything, what has crystallized the reason for us to actually offer a metabolic type program, metabolic code program at the pharmacy with health coaching, it's because I have a number of practitioners that say, Robert, I'm very busy managing all these lab results from the patients. I'm balancing their hormones. I'm balancing their...
Welcome back. This is Ask the Experts here at AM 720 KDWN. Jim Dallas here along with Robert Seik from Partell Pharmacy. Check them out, partellpharmacy.com. 702-791-3800 is the phone number. 2 locations, 8751 West Charleston, also 5835 Southeastern here in Southern Nevada. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here in the first half of the show, but I wanted to ask you, Robert, because you've been talking throughout about functional medicine, but the fact that you didn't learn about the functional medicine in pharmacy school, I'm kind of wondering, where are you getting your information?
Well, that's a good question, Jim, because a lot of people say that when I do a little public lecture, and they'll say, you must have learned all of this in pharmacy school. Even when I go to seminars, medical practitioners attending the same seminars as me say, oh, you're a pharmacist, you must have learned this. And I say to them all, and I say, well, you have to keep in mind, we're primarily trained as pharmacists as treatment consultants, but we're trained using drugs. I mean, that's pharmacy. What dispensing pharmacy is all about is dispensing the prescription drugs that physicians write. And the way I look at, well, what's the difference between that and functional medicine is, well, by the time we have to use one or more prescription drugs, something in the body has probably already been broken. Okay, your regular balanced healthy metabolism has been disrupted for one reason or another. But if we can take it a step back and take more preventive measures, well, now you can see the field of functional medicine and how it has sprung up, and where I specifically went to learn. Just because it's a well-marketed program caught my attention first. It's called the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, or A4M. It's actually a program administered through the University of South Florida School of Medicine. So I have a fellowship certification in that program. There's a master's degree that I'm also currently pursuing. And what that meant for me is so far I have taken 30 modules, each of them 24 hours long of lecture.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, here's the great news. It's not the only resource of information. The attention being drawn to more preventive measures in medicine is drawn to not only pharmacists like me. I think I'm one of the few pharmacists in a program like that, but there are 8,000 physicians alone enrolled in the fellowship program with the A4M. But that's not the only organization. A4M is where I learned a lot of information. I read Jim LaValle's book as one of the first, Cracking the Metabolic Code. But you have other excellent organizations, too, that also have their thousands of practitioners pursuing credentials. And they're known by names such as the Institute of Functional Medicine, the Metabolic Medical Institute. You have the ACAM, American College for the Advancement of Medicine. There's several organizations, and what's really great is major universities. George Washington University, it's not only the University of South Florida, but now a major university, George Washington University, has its own credentialing program in functional and integrative medicine. And I think this just gives, a lot of solidarity for those of us that have been working in the field, learning about this information, and great resources for the clinical practitioner to know that, wow, I can really go learn about this. I can get credentialed. And coming from, universities, it really lends a lot of credibility. So many resources out there. I found the A4M, and I've been taking classes for 10 years there.
That's amazing, the amount of information that you continue to learn. I mean, certainly you are well-read and you've gathered all this information throughout your life, but these particular routes, it's a great way to go.
Yeah, I really think so. And we were talking about Jim LaValle's book, Cracking the Metabolic Code. That has been a foundational work. And one of the things that I noticed over the years attending the program is I'm sitting in the audience with mostly medical practitioners around me, physicians, physician assistants, nurses, nurse practitioners, and they all say, wow, there's so much information being given to us that was big departure from the way all of us were trained, frankly, the standard allopathic Western medical approach. And what they're looking for is, well, how can I get started when I go back to work Monday morning? And it's one of the things that I first noticed and have made always for my company, Partell Pharmacy, the fact that we would host educational programs, because not every physician is enrolled in with the A4M or the IFM, but they still want to learn this information. And I'm actually hosting a seminar where Jim LaValle will be the primary speaker, and the head of the George Washington program I mentioned, Andy Heyman. They're coming to speak to doctors in Las Vegas at a seminar on functional medicine, specifically about the metabolic code. So there again will be physicians in a room listening attentively and making small changes to their practice and helping their patients get healthier.
It is Ask the Experts here at AM 720 KDWN. Robert Seik here from Partell Pharmacy. Check them out, partellpharmacy.com. 702-791-3800 is the phone number. 8751 West Charleston, 5835 Southeastern, the two locations here in Southern Nevada. Now, you mentioned triads a little while ago, Robert, and I wanted to ask you, because I know that there are several different types. I think there's up to, 5? Is that correct?
Yeah, we talked about the metabolic code approach. And, as I mentioned, these classes that I've taken, information is coming from, there's so much dumped on us in these classes, and clinicians and, myself too. I want to know, well, where do I start and how do I categorize the patients and score them? And we talked a little bit on this show, triad number 1. That doesn't always mean it is the first triad where a first step a practitioner should take in making a patient healthier, but just what I have found in the patients that I've assessed with the assessment form, and I'm going to coach them on diet and nutrition. Okay, I'm not going to diagnose them or treat them. I'm just going to show them ways they can be healthier like we talk about on this show. But I do often find that triad number 1 is where they score the highest. Remember, that's your energy regulation system. Disruptions in your adrenal, thyroid, pancreas triad. Well, then triad number 2 in functional medicine is the gut, immune, brain. So your gut is a 30-foot tube from end to end. Some clinicians have now referred to it as the second brain. You know, there's more receptors for neurotransmitters in your gut than there are actually in the brain.
That's amazing, too. Well, I've often heard that our gut really is where our immune system is.
You know, 70% of immune defense, according to the functional medicine doctors, they'll say that it belongs in the gut so that you're not exposed to things that you eat or swallow, that you are actually able to neutralize it before it invades the body. And even, if we talk about not only just invaders that we may have on a piece of food, but we talk about foods that you may become sensitive to. So you have, let's say, a high stress person. Okay, they might be high on the adrenal score. Well, that might cause their gut to erode, or maybe they're on medications for a long time like NSAIDs, these nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or they have ulcers. Well, the gut is designed to separate us from what belongs in the body and what doesn't.
Right.
We're supposed to break down food into the smallest components, but what if a big chunk of something gets through? Let's say that big chunk is this protein we call casein that happens to be in milk. You don't digest it very well because your gut function isn't great. And now your gut barrier is eroded for one reason. So we call that increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut syndrome, the more layman term. But a whole chunk of something comes through, and the immune system doesn't know how to distinguish that from an invader. It just knows it doesn't belong, and it starts to create antibodies to it to knock it out.
Right.
Well, what if this happens to one food? Now 3, 4, 5, 6, and you don't necessarily have to break out in a rash or hives to know that you have a lot of food sensitivity, but you can just be generally inflamed. You can pick that up on a complete blood count. Doctors will look at it in functional medicine and say, wow, your body is inflamed. You're reacting to something. It might be your food. So you see how the gut can activate the immune system, and you might be a little bit inflamed, a little bit red. Some doctors will tell you about the scratch test. Take your finger and drag your fingernail lightly across your forearm, and if behind it leaves a red streak, you're loaded with a inflammatory compound called histamine. What if in the severe case you actually start to develop an autoimmune disease? And people who have them are very familiar with how serious they can be. Diseases like lupus, scleroderma, Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, rheumatoid arthritis. That's an extreme case of the immune system being aggravated. So triad number 2, gut, immune, brain. We want to look at that connection to make sure that we catch somebody before something breaks. If you already have rheumatoid arthritis, something broke. But if you score high on this triad number 2, and a practitioner looks and says, you know what, you have some problems with your gut now. You might not have broken anything yet. You don't have an autoimmune disease. You don't have severe seasonal allergies. You don't have asthma. But all of these things indicate a hyperactive immune system. Well, let's calm that down before something breaks. And doesn't that seem like the nature of preventive medicine?
We're talking about your healthy future. Hopefully that is the case if you're looking to lose weight, or maybe you're putting together some New Year's resolutions. It's right around the corner. Then maybe Partell Pharmacy can help. PartellPharmacy.com, 702-791-3800 is the number. 2 locations here in Southern Nevada, 8751 West Charleston, also 5835 Southeastern. That's PartellPharmacy.com. Great information. We still have some more to go. You're listening to Ask the Experts here on AM 720 KDWN. Welcome back. It is Ask the Experts here at AM 720 KDWN. Jim Dallas here along with Robert Seik from Partell Specialty Pharmacy. 2 locations here in Southern Nevada, 8751 West Charleston, also 5835 Southeastern. Check them out, PartellPharmacy.com, 702-791-3800. Again, the number 702-791-3800. And, of course, they do have a juice bar. You want to go by, especially the one on Eastern. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the only one where we have a juice bar right now. Just can't quite work out the plumbing yet with the building owner at our West Side location. But the Eastern and Russell store, the juice bar, we call it the Green Regime. I'm pleased that we got some really good reviews on Yelp. I use Yelp to make reviews, and I usually only use it when I have a bad review to give. But we've gotten a number of good reviews, and I'm really proud of that.
Now, we were talking earlier in the show, if you just tuned in. Robert Seik is here from Partell Pharmacy. You're talking about the triads, and we've covered a couple of them, and I know that there are 5. So let's start right there. What are the other 3?
Well, we've talked about triad number 1, your energy triad, where we're going to look at your body's metabolism, adrenal, thyroid, pancreas, is that relationship. Number 2 is going to help govern, your immune function. That's your gut immune brain. Of course, there's a connection between your cardiovascular, your cardiopulmonary neuro, and your vascular system. Okay, so the heart and lung connection is a big thing, influenced by some of the other triads. When people score high on the metabolic code assessment, that they're very loaded with toxins, and there's certain questions that pertain to that let us know that might be an issue to look at. Well, they might score high on what we call the drainage triad, the liver, lymph, and kidneys. These are the drainage systems of the body. And then the 5th triad, and that's the one that gets the most attention because I happen to be a compounding pharmacist, and hormone replacement therapy is a big part of what we do. Well, that's the hormone triad, the big 3 hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And, it's a lot of material. You'll see why, if you ever get the book, Jim, Cracking the Metabolic Code, why it's such a thick book, and then also why physicians attend numerous seminars to learn how to talk about all 5 triads. And we could make weeks and weeks of radio shows on getting down to the fine points. And if all I do is ever talk about triad 1, which is what we mentioned at first in this radio show, it's a good start for people to get healthier.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot on that show about testosterone and estrogen. We'll have to maybe kind of rehash some of that as time goes on. But remind us, again, the triads, how we can really get started on this.
Well, the email address that we created at Partell Pharmacy to have patients ask for more information is radio@partellpharmacy.com. When you send an email and say, hey, I wanted to learn more about these triads or the metabolic code, what you'll do is you'll get an email reply with a link that invites you to take the metabolic code assessment. And when you take the assessment, you will see the scores along these 5 triads. That's the primary place to get started. It's what we use with our health coaches for most of our nutritional intervention with diet and supplements. The medical practitioners are going to be using the metabolic code approach too, and what they'll do is order the labs that are necessary when a problem area is identified so that they can properly diagnose the patient and take the right steps. But most of what we do at the pharmacy, Jim, with the patients is we concentrate how we can best work on triad number 1, the body's energy system, because that's going to require a proper, healthy diet that's nutrient dense. And remember, getting rid of that flour and sugar out of the diet. We see tremendous changes there. And then, of course, yes, there are nutritional supplements that help regulate your blood sugar and improve your energy and support the thyroid. And whether or not those are necessary, that's what we use with the assessment form. So the starting point to get invited to take the assessment is radio@partellpharmacy.com. Now,
we got to remind everybody here, too, that when you take a look at that chart, the food chart, and you mentioned how much flour and sugar we consume throughout a year. It's pretty amazing. That's not a problem if you do eat vegetables. I think what people have a problem with is getting filled up by eating vegetables.
That's true, and we mentioned it on the show. If there's one major thing we can do, and one thing was the theme of one of our show, average American eats 150 pounds of sugar, 200 pounds of flour per year, because that's the bottom of the food pyramid, the grains and the breads and the cereals. Let's take that out and replace that with leafy vegetables, as many vegetables as we can. Maybe not necessarily very starchy potatoes, but most other vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, all these great vegetables. You can eat a lot of them, and they're still very low in calories.
Right.
And that's what's going to help you feel full you do have to get used to chewing. Yes, you got to chew your bites a lot. You can't inhale the food. And, we talked about that. The bulking in your diet is something that inhibits appetite. The number of times you chew actually satisfies your brain's hunger. So that's a good strategy. Make sure you chew your food 30 times per bite. I'll settle for 20, but I say 30.
Yeah.
See if I can get it. And then healthy fats. People are eating, okay, I'm going to eat more salad. Okay, check, I can do that. Well, let's put some healthy fats on that salad. I don't like to cook with olive oil. It overheats it and kind of oxidizes it. But olive oil after a food is cooked to brush on something, olive oil on a salad. There's other healthy oils like coconut oil. That one I do like to cook with. It can handle high heat. There's plenty of healthy oils. Fats are also something that satisfy the brain to say, okay, you don't need to be hungry anymore. And we talked about that, Jim, because you asked about snacks.
Yes.
The main meals I've typically find in coaching, people can say, I'm going to take this seriously and I'll change my breakfast, I'll change my lunch, and I'll do my best to change but what do I snack on? Hey, I like to take a small handful of nuts. Because you got minerals in those nuts, and you got healthy fats in the nuts, and the healthy fats inhibit appetite, right? Or if you need other low-calorie snack ideas, celery sticks and a little bit of peanut butter, or celery sticks and hummus, cucumber slices and hummus, a slice of nice roasted turkey and an apple and a few nuts. People often ask, what do I snack on? Because chips are easy to reach for, but
sure,
that's the starchy stuff we want to avoid.
Well, and that's what I have changed my habit since we've done the show, is I am eating more of those peanuts. You get it in a little packet. It's about the size of a breakfast bar. It's not very large. I'm just wondering, is the salt, is that kind of maybe a negative in with that positive?
Table salt, there's a lot of data that shows it's the chemicalized table salt that we should try to avoid. I think modest amounts of sea salt or natural salts, I think they're okay. They have nice trace minerals and they're properly balanced. But if you're definitely salt sensitive or your physician has told you to avoid salt, I would say, try to go for some unsalted nuts. And also for you, Jim, peanuts have some healthy fats and everything in them. You always want to try to buy organic if you can, of course. But I like to tell people to rotate what nut they use. So if you're not already sensitive to nuts, and some people have food allergies to nuts or maybe one kind of nut, but if you're not already sensitive and you want to make sure you avoid becoming sensitive to nut, what I do is I get a jar of 7 different nuts, and I'll have a handful of one.
Oh, yeah.
A different one every day.
Yeah.
So you got peanuts one day, almonds another, pecans another, walnuts another. You can rotate them. There you go.
The best.
And a little bit of sea salt, in my opinion, is okay. I do use it, but I haven't been told to avoid salt. I don't have a blood pressure issue, so it's okay. You just got to be cautious and balance those recommendations.
Well, that's what I thought. I don't have any sensitivity to salt or anything either, but I was just curious if you have a negative in there with a positive, you're not really helping yourself.
Yeah, if you see the nuts advertised with sea salt, I'd say, hey, not so bad, okay? If they're just salted nuts and it doesn't specify sea salt, personally, I'm recommending you avoid that.
Right. Just one more time, Robert, remind us how we get started with your program.
So the Metabolic Code Assessment. It'll be a formalized program we really launched, but you can start by taking the assessment form now by emailing us for an invitation on the Metabolic Code Assessment. radio@partellpharmacy.com is the email address, and it's also the Metabolic Code. Metabolic Code is this week's promotional code at the pharmacy, good for discounts on any non-prescription item within our stores.
Great information, and you can find Robert Seik at partellpharmacy.com, 702-791-3800. That's partellpharmacy.com, 702-791-3800. 2 locations here in Southern Nevada, 8751 West Charleston, also 5835 Southeastern. We could do it all day, Robert, but I tell you what, we'll wait till next week. You've been listening to Ask the Experts here on AM 720 KDWN.